Today we're going to discuss Indian education and the role that missionaries, boarding schools, Jones Academy, Head Start, and Choctaw universities played in shaping our native youth's future. So if you will, think back with me, in the 1800s, think about how the parents had to deal with the federal government and the missionaries coming in and taking their children away and sending them off to boarding schools. I mean, as a parent today, I know how that would just devastate me and my wife to know that somebody just came in and took our child away and sent them to a school of their choice. And we really didn't have much say in where they went. There were some positive and negatives in that. And so today we're going to look at how the missionaries played a role in that, how the boarding schools played a role in education, and then look at today how the Head Starts, early Head Starts, and Jones Academy and Choctaw University shaped that for our kids. So missionaries created boarding schools on the reservations to help educate the children and send them away so that they could learn the important work ethic, the educational opportunities to just help shape their future. And so while most missionaries had good intentions, there were some bad intentions through missionaries. These missionaries tried to convert the thoughts of the native people, try to change their culture, to get them to believe in the American way of life. They wanted them basically to be like the white people. That was their thought. The natives, they didn't like this. They didn't like the white people coming in and trying to tell them how they needed to raise their children, how they needed to educate their children, and basically to follow the federal government and the white man's law. There was no trust there. So as they did not want to assimilate into the American way, this assimilation process slowed, and which was a positive thing. And so what they started to do is the natives began to sell a piece of their land off little by little, and this developed relationships with the federal government, and it developed a bond that would greatly impact the educational future of our children later on in society. The government and the missionaries believed that they could convert the natives' culture, and that this would give them full control of everything that the Native American people did. And this was a very, very difficult process and a very difficult time for the native people, because they felt like everything that they were told by the federal government was a lie, because everything the federal government did was to better the federal government and the white people and to destroy the native people. So as the boarding schools began to be built and constructed, some were built on reservations, and some of the native families felt as though that was a more positive place to have a school, because they could sometimes get to see their children right there on the reservation, while other boarding schools were built off-site, off the reservation, and they didn't provide as many opportunities to see their kids. So sometimes they'd leave and it'd be years before they ever came back home. The goal of the boarding schools were to influence the children towards Christianity, to provide the children with Christian names, and to prepare them as laborers and workers in the real world. And this may sound as a positive, and in today's society, that's what we want, is for our children to be able to go out and work and provide for their families and be educated. But some of the negatives were they were forcibly removed without the parents' consent or will. These people just showed up, took their kids, drug them off, whether it be on the same reservation or off to an off-site reservation school. The U.S. and natives entered into 370 treaties during the late 1800s to try to ensure that the health and the education of the tribal members was in place. These treaties, while some of them were favorable, some of them were non-favorable. The federal government utilized these treaties to build relationships with the tribes so that they could, help protect themselves and the white people, but also some of them were, as we got later in the year, some of them did favor the tribes. And so the treaties promised to provide the education and health services to the tribes, and they felt as though this was the best way to educate the young children and for them to accept the white people's way. So they thought by coming and getting the kids and taking them to the school that they would learn to live the American way, and then that would allow the government to have full control. One of the best known off-reservation boarding schools was founded by Richard Pratt in 1879, and the goal of that school was to complete the assimilation process. and convert the native people to Christianity, and that was deemed the most essential part. The children were not allowed to speak their native language, so the only language that could be spoken at the boarding schools were English, and so the English language had to be spoken. Even if they had siblings right there in their same class and in the same school, they could not speak their native language to their siblings. And you can imagine how difficult a language barrier that would be for young children to know that they can't speak their own language. And so the school was kind of broken up into 2 half days. In the first half of the day, they would do education and academics, and a lot of the education revolved around teaching the English language and then some math and sciences. The second part of the day was more industrial training, where the females would learn to cook, clean, laundry, and sew, while the boys would learn blacksmithing, shoemaking, and farming. And these are all traits and work ethics that still play an important role in today's society. The boarding schools were deemed to be self-sufficient, and the students would do all, or if not the majority, of all the work that needed to be done at each of the schools. One of the negatives was the native families pushed back. They resisted this, and so a lot of them did not go do the education, and they did not assimilate. So again, like I said earlier, this is a slow process, and I think it played in the natives' favor for it to be a slow process, because as years passed by, the government and the Native Americans, they learned to deal with each other. They learned to work together, and they became more involved in the treaty process, and over time builds trust. And so the natives would soon gain control over their education programs due to the treaties and everything as we get into the 19th century. So as we finish up with the boarding schools, that transitions into the day's timeline to where we are today. And today, a lot of the Native American tribes have had the success of having Head Starts and federal funding provided by the federal government to help educate our native children. And a lot of the gaming impact it's had on some of the tribes and some of the larger tribes has allowed the tribes to build some of the state-of-the-art Head Starts. And so, for instance, we'll be talking about the Choctaw Nation in particular. They have Head Start programs scattered out throughout their 10.5 counties, which is their territory that they cover in southeastern Oklahoma. And they start these early Head Start programs at the age of 3. So even our son, when he was 3 years old, he attended the Choctaw Nation early Head Start program. And they have 14 Head Start facilities that are constructed across the 10.5 counties to start that foundation of education that's so important to our children's lives. Like I said, the government is federally funded, the biggest part of it, but most of these facilities that the tribe has built has been built by tribal dollars, not federal dollars. And today, they enroll over 350 kids annually, so there's about 350 Choctaw kids a year that are positively impacted by the education. And so that's one of the reasons that the tribes are doing that, is to ensure the proper education. So as we leave the Head Starts and we filter into the Jones Academy, that's one of the boarding schools, if you will, an all-tribe school. It's open to all the tribes. Right now, I think that it serves kids from 29 different tribes all across the United States. It was founded by the Choctaw Nation in 1891. Today, grades 1 through 12 are being served there, and there's over 200 kids that are enrolled there from these 29 tribes. They get to experience cultural, educational, and recreational activities, and the Jones Academy School is spread out over 500 acres. So they do a lot of agricultural services from planting and farming to showing livestock. And some of these kids, over the holidays, they don't get it to go home and be with their parents on Christmas or Thanksgiving, and it's a real good thing that the tribe has done for these children of 29 different tribes. And they're given the care and the attention and the resources they need so that they can become an independent adult. And that's so important, because our children are our future to our tribes. And last but not least, let's look at Choctaw University. That's another institution that the Choctaw Nation has created. It was founded in 2012. And basically, Choctaw University is a continuing education and leadership series for tribal employees of the Choctaw Nation. This program has been very instrumental in shaping the leadership of the tribe's future. We've got, I think there's been 455 certifications issued since 2012 to its employees, and 22 of those associates has earned their bachelor's degree through a joint effort with Southeastern Oklahoma State University. And in 2017, they've had 255 applicants, which is their largest class ever. And so education is at the forefront of the Choctaw Nation and is strongly being pushed by our chief and our leadership. And for that, we owe them a big thank you. And so this kind of gives us a timeline of how Indian education has evolved over the years from the 1800s to the present day. It's definitely an important aspect of the sustainability of our tribe and our culture, and it's a must that we continue to properly educate the youth of our Native Americans.